Whether it's for an aging parent or another family member, many of us know the difficulties of being a caregiver. Even when caregiving involves support from other people or an institution, caregiving can still pose many demands, whether physical, managerial, or psychological. One caregiver from Jamaica Plain is transforming her own experience into a broader conversation through a series of podcasts called The Shape of Care. We'd like to welcome the co-producer of the podcast, Mindy Fried, and one of the caregivers featured in the series, Laurie Sheridan. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Mindy. Take me from your own experience as a caregiver to coming up with the idea for doing a podcast.
So my father passed away when he was 4 days shy of 98 years old. And for a year and a half prior to his dying, my sister and I were his caregivers on the weekend. He lived in Buffalo, New York, and so we had to get there from our respective cities. And the experience was really intense and very profound. And I wrote about it kind of for myself, and sometimes I blogged about it during that experience. But in the end, I ended up writing a book, kind of a memoir about taking care of my dad in the last year of his life called Caring for Red. And then I toured around the country with Caring for Red and talked to hundreds of people about their own caregiving experiences. And it just struck me, I mean, I knew that caregiving was something that many people were experiencing, but the universality of the issue really hit me hard. And I felt that people, even though there's kind of this universal experience, people are quite isolated in that experience, and that there's a need, people have a need to talk about it. And there's a lot of information that could be shared. And as a person who loves podcasts anyway, I thought, maybe I could try, take a shot at it. And I took a workshop at the PRX Podcast Garage and fell in love with the idea. It was really great. I mean, there's a lot I could talk about in terms of how I figured out how to do it, but that made me kind of certain that I was going to try and create a podcast of my own.
Laurie, you're a caregiver for your husband, Ira, and in some ways, I think you were prepared to deal with this, but I guess in other ways, this was just a whole new shock for you, wasn't it?
Totally unprepared. Yes, yes. I mean, luckily, Parkinson's is a disease, a degenerative disease that progresses slowly, usually, so that I've had time to adjust and continuously adjust over the years. It's been 15 years, so in the beginning, it was not much to deal with. And then it's increasingly become my life and the center of the universe for me. It's now kind of all-consuming, although I am no longer the full-time caregiver. I'm the coordinator of the caregivers, and I do some hands-on care, but less and less because I'm older and less able.
I want to ask you about that promotion, as it were, because one of the things that you struggled with was drawing the line between what you could do and what was beyond that. How did you make the decision?
It's a continuous decision. I typically am behind. There's a lag in my adjusting to the changes because a progressive disease, I hate the word that it progress, but it progresses. And so I have to keep adjusting, and I keep detecting in myself the signs that I'm starting to burn out again. I honestly get impatient and angry and resentful, and I start yelling at him, and I think, oh, that means you need more help. Right. And of course, I'm getting older myself, so I get tired. I would be having a harder time even if it weren't progressing, but it is. He's now completely disabled and unable to do anything for himself. So
when I hear you talk about it, I can imagine people listening to you, and all of a sudden the light comes and there are a lot of us who feel so exasperated. But why did you want to talk about this on the podcast?
I think that it's helpful to me to reflect on this experience and to think about my life. It helps. I mean, I'm continuously making decisions about how much I'm willing to do, how much I'm willing to sacrifice, honestly. So to me, it's an opportunity also to share with others, because I keep running into people. Parkinson's is a common disease, and it is a disease of aging. So I keep running into people I know who have it, or their partner has it, or a family member has it or has had it. And they don't know what they're getting into either. So to me, it's become a little bit of a mission of supporting people and helping them understand what they might be facing, even though it varies for everybody, individual by individual. There's so much learning you have to do to just reconstruct your life and manage your life in a new situation.
Mindy, there's more to this than just personal stories. I mean, what you're looking at are the structures around care, and you were exploring it. What should people be expecting in the series?
Well, I think as a sociologist, I really do think about how personal experiences connect to larger social structures and to policy. And so I would say at its heart, the podcast is a storytelling podcast. But we also interject the impact of social policy or the lack of a coherent policy around long-term care that affects everybody. And, you know, looking at the fact that we now have 10,000 people turning 65 every day in this country, and that the needs for care are increasing dramatically, that, you know, these are issues that many people need to grapple with. And so in some ways, through stories, through information, through a broader kind of perspective, you're brought along a journey to understand how the people's personal experiences, like Laurie's, connect to broader social policy. And so two of my guests are kind of activists around care policy and sort of policy makers. Aijen Poo, who runs the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and Sarita Gupta, who along with Aijen runs Caring Across Generations. And they talk very much about the need for broader policy. In fact, Aijen says that we have a crisis-tunity, which is we're in a crisis, but we have an opportunity to make some changes. And she talks about the need for infrastructure to meet the demands that so many people are coming into at this point.
Or even when caregivers are paid, the quality can vary quite a bit. But you can look at that with your experience as a labor activist. So what do you see in that?
In some ways, and Mindy and I have talked about this, it reminds me of childcare workers a lot, who are disrespected, underpaid, work very, very hard, and it's very emotionally demanding work. So I get angry a lot and try to advocate for the long-term care workforce, honestly. And there are organizations that do much more than I do. It's such intimate work in your home. We've been able to keep my husband home all these years, although not everyone can do that. So, but basically I have someone living in my house almost all the time. Mm-hmm. So we get to know each other really well. I mean, it's a very up close, it's not just a job. And if it is, it's like almost impossible to do. So I've really come to appreciate the flexibility and the patience and the kindness people put into this work. It requires incredible emotional intelligence as well as physical skills, heavy lifting. People, I mean, I worked in occupational safety and health for years, so I know that aides and nursing home workers have the highest incidence of injury of any occupation in the country. People think it's construction workers, but that's fatalities. It's back injuries, heavy lifting. There are not enough resources that go into the wages for home health aides and nursing home workers, and it's just abundantly clear. But as in childcare, we're in the position where if you have to pay privately, which people do unless they're on Medicaid, you can't afford it either. So it's that dilemma. You can't pay enough, and people don't get paid enough for what they actually do and the skills they have to have.
Mm-hmm. Mindy, another demographic trend here, as more of us get older, we're also going to be dealing with the issue of how do you deal with the LGBTQ population. You had Dale Mitchell of Ethos, at least the previous director of Ethos, on talking about that. What did you learn from him about that?
Well, so Dale started this project called the LGBT Aging Project, and the inception of that project, which you will hear in episode 5, if you can hold on, is that he started looking as the CEO of Ethos. He saw the wide panoply of services that they were providing to the general elder population, and he thought about what would it be like as a gay man for a stranger to come into my home. And he thought about his experiences with institutions and people's attitudes, and he was terrified. And he, I learned a lot about what can be done, because the LGBT Aging Project has a number of sort of mechanisms to bring support to LGBT elders, and also, case management, in which they do training of their staff so that home care workers who go into their homes are sensitive to the issues that they're facing or may themselves be LGBTQ folks. I think the other piece I learned is that it's very expensive for him to continue through Ethos to do a lot of what they wanted to do. And so he's been trying to work in a consortium of folks. There's a bill that's has been kind of sitting around for a while to mandate that there be training of people who work with elders so that they can be LGBT friendly. So it's not just, what happens within one project or with one institution, but on a larger scale.
I see the potential here building a constituency for a lot of different bills.
Yeah.
We should mention, people want to find out more about the podcast and hear Laurie in the first installment. How can they do that?
Okay, well, if you're a podcast person, then wherever you find podcasts, you will find The Shape of Care. If it's a new thing to you, you can find it through iTunes/Apple, through Stitcher, through Spotify. You can also go on my website, which is www.theshapeofcare.org, and you will see the link to each episode. And not only that, but on the website we have more information. So, for example, on the episode 1, which is called when your romantic partner has Parkinson's disease, the episode page, we have what are called show notes, but it includes resources for caregivers or people taking care of someone with Parkinson's disease. It includes, a little blog post. It has more pictures and that sort of thing. So there's more information if you go on the website.
Thank you both very much, Mindy Fried and Laurie Sheridan.
Pleasure. Thank you, Chris.